It's so hard not to react to the music every time. I can't do it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 9 of Stat Check. This episode is called Leaks of Votann. As you might have noticed, I'm Ennis. I'm still here, and they won't let me leave. Please, somebody, send help. I am
Blink
joined.
twice if you need to be rescued, NS. Blink twice.
I am joined, as occasionally, by Nathan of Nathaning. I am not joined this week by Anthony because Anthony is feeling a little under the weather and is unfortunately going to take a rest break this week. So I think it's my turn to be off next week based on the current trajectory. So we'll see what happens. I'll probably be here. I hate myself enough to keep doing this at this time of night. So yeah, that's a thing.
I'm sorry, NS. I am Nathan of the Dr. Stats Dad Persuasion. And I was not here last week. I'm replacing Anthony this week in the group of people who make sure that Innes doesn't go totally off the rails. And because
Just do a
apparently
terrible job.
I know I've done a terrible job so far, especially because in the background, Jeremy had to step in and hit the music button because I didn't know which button did the music to do the intro section.
Was that Jeremy? Okay, I'm glad
I'm
somebody's.
I'm pretty sure it was Jeremy who had to pop in. So this week, as Anna said, it's leaks of Votann because we're going to talk about some Votann.
We're probably not much because Anthony's not here, and Anthony's the one who's really dug into those rules.
Yep,
But yeah, we'll
we can.
talk about them in a little bit.
Yep. Otherwise, we're going to talk about Rings of Power, is what I've been told.
Yeah. So agenda this week, we got Rings of Power, very very important. Leagues of Votann, don't really care. Um, mostly just Rings of Power. We're also going to talk about Rings of Power, the new Lord of the Rings show on Amazon Prime, Rings of Power.
We're going to talk about some 40k stats as well.
I went to an event. Nova
We'll talk about
happened,
that.
and LGT's coming up pretty soon, and that's probably a pretty big deal. So we are going to talk
We'll
about
probably
all
talk
these
about all that
things
then.
and more about Lord of the Rings.
Yep, sounds about good. Yeah. So how was your weekend, S? I'm going to make you go first.
Yeah, it was really good actually. I think I was speaking about this last week. I put myself through the Herculean effort of painting a lot of Gene Circle in a weekend, which I did manage somehow. I'm still not entirely sure how I got through it, but I painted 40 neophytes, 16 bikes, 6 wolf quads, four acolytes, and 2 rock grinders in 2 days. They're not good, but they are technically battle ready and based and all that good stuff. Some of it arrived on the Monday evening. It was being built while I was like in between episodes. It was horrible. I really don't recommend it. But it was really good fun to play. I played at the Unconquerable Invitational this weekend. So I played 5 solid games against 5 people who had gone undefeated at the UKT series events. I managed to win the first 2 games. I ended up dropping my third game, which is on stream. You can see that on the Warhammer Tournament's Facebook page. I decided to play way too aggressively into a customs list and got promptly punished when he rolled very good 4+s on his turn. I rolled not great damage output. And then he put me in the hole. And I gave myself that loss condition. I think I could have played that game a lot cleaner with a little more experience, but that's what it's good for. But that was the game that was on stream. So it's the one game of the weekend I lost, I got to play on stream, which always stings a little bit because you're like, oh, God, any of the ones, it would have been fine. So I played Custodes and Guard in game 1 against the Baneblade, which I did 0 damage to because why would you even bother trying to kill that thing as GSC? It's just not worth it. I played against Sisters. I played against Custodes in game 3. And then game 4 and 5, I got the pleasure of playing against 13 Armiger Imperial Knights and like the Australian Necrons list while I'm playing my Australian Gene Circle list, which I scored a 97 against, which felt real good. So I ended up coming 5th and winning the second cut. So it was, the people who all went 3-0 in their bracket or the top of their bracket played the first cut and so on and so forth down the line. So there ended up being 6 pods and I won pod 2. So I got a little nice little medal for that and all that good stuff. So no complaints. It was all right. I'm really enjoying the list. I'm going to try it out in RTT this weekend. And I'm going to try and look at getting some G Circle content on the go. I'm going to maybe try and get an episode with Eric Latherus for behind the scenes. So keep an eye out for that if you are on the Patreon.
So if people want to see that list and kind of know where it came from, that came from Eric Latherus's WTC list, right?
Yep, just straight up Eric Latherus's WTC list. The Facebook link for the stream, I will see if I can dig it out and I will chuck it in the show notes on the YouTube video, PJ. Unfortunately, I don't have it to hand. And it's the link I have is just like an fb.me link, so it's not particularly memorable. So me just reading it out is going to do absolutely nothing for you guys, unfortunately. It is going up on the UKTC the UKTC YouTube page, and if Nathan wants to talk about his week, I will see if I can get a link to that, because that's actually going to be easier.
Sure. I didn't really do too much. I was hosting family and in-laws all weekend who were visiting Chicago. So there was all that, but I did get in at one game of 40K, so I've been playing Harlequins a little bit more recently. So I played Harlequins into a local friend's Necrons, which was interesting. Turns out going first against Necrons really helps you out with setting up some early board presence and then being able to dance 6 inches away from charges from Scorpex is quite handy when you dance right out of charge range on most of them. So that was good. So I won that game with just the Silent King left on the table for my opponent, essentially, which was kind of neat. Didn't really think that was how the game was going to go, but it ended up going that way. Also, I've discovered that I really, really, really hate Luck of the Laughing God from the bottom of my heart. The changes they made to it make it very unwieldy.
But you're not rolling to see if you get rules this turn.
Yeah. I mean, I rolled 3 dice every single turn because I figured, like, what the hell, as long as if I get 3 different results, I'll get 3 dice, and that's a good number to have because it allows you to do a bunch of extra stuff. But most of the time, you probably only want to roll 2 dice if you actually want to get the rule to work.
I
but
bet if I switch to this account, I can post this in chat. Sorry, Nathan, I'm definitely totally listening.
You're fine, buddy. I'm sure that my weekend of no tournaments, just painting, some 3D printing, and then hustling my in-laws around to various neighborhoods in Chicago is not as interesting, to be fair.
But you did play Harlequins, who are definitely not a dead link. So
No,
in the chat,
Harlequins definitely dead.
Curie has done a wonderful thing and posted a link to the Facebook page, and then the fb.watch link is a direct link to the videos. I believe if you also go on YouTube, it is Warhammer-tournaments, but the videos will be uploaded there, but they're not there yet. I think they're still being processed. It was good, though. It was nice to be on stream at a UKTC event, and it was a confirmation that there's going to be stream at LGT, which I think is something that everybody will be very happy to hear. And I think it's just player mics as well, which is definitely a choice that they've made. It keeps it cheap and cheerful for them, but we'll see what happens of the day.
Well, everybody complains that they don't have player mics all the time on American streams, and personally, I think you want that buffer between the stream and the actual participants.
Dude, I can't not swear when I play 40K. I don't know how to stop it.
Yep. I've been told that I now swear more now that I've played 40K and been in the podcasting and also in voice chat and in person at events more. I actually swear more than I did before, which I didn't think was possible. And so I hope that I never have to be on stream at an event because I do curse a lot. Probably not the best habit to have. Probably scares some of my opponents when there's just a tattooed guy with a beard yelling.
Yeah, but swearing around old people and having them all look at you is one of life's great pleasures. So,
I mean, fair. I guess we can transition
I might have
into
problems.
Well, I wasn't going to say it, but since you said it, yeah, Ennis, maybe we should talk about that. We'll talk about that after the Rings of Power chat we have later, where we can talk about how representation is good in fantasy. I bet that can be a thing we can talk about.
We definitely shouldn't touch on that because it's just a good thing and it shouldn't require discussion.
I mean, that's true. It is just the truth of the matter is that if it's the black dwarves that break your immersion, you have different problems in a series that has dragons, magic,
more
wizards,
importantly,
and elves.
did you see how absolutely ruined that eagle got in the intro by the Felbies?
Actually, I saw the eagle. I was like, "Oh, damn, an eagle!" And then it died immediately. And I was like, "Oh shit, that eagle!"
So why did they just ride the eagles to Mordor? That's why, buddy.
That's why. I feel like so. There's been a couple different series, both this series and then also the newest Siege of Terra book, where they've directly addressed community memes. And if you do read Echoes of Eternity, you'll know the chapter when you get to it. And I think both of them are equally both funny, but also kind of nice tongue-in-cheek moments where the community kind of gets kicked in the face.
Yeah, last Horror Ceremony book I read was like No Fear, so I'm real out of that series.
You should just read Siege of Terra. And the series after the first book gets a lot better. The first book is kind of slow because it's mostly like space warfare stuff. And space warfare in 40K is more like naval warfare than it is like space warfare. Neither here nor there. So stats, I suppose, because nobody wants to hear me talk about Siege of Terra books. Although they are really good. And Echoes of Eternity made me feel very sad. A lot.
But don't you just feel sad all the time because you look at the stats? I'm enjoying the chat at the moment as well. Just Cathal just slagging me right the F off.
I mean, that's actually kind of novel. Usually it's the reverse. You're slagging chat off instead of chat slagging you
let's
off.
do a little thing at the start. All of our thoughts from the statue community go out to Aaron Buckley, who is currently in hospital with some difficulties. We're all hoping he pulls through, but he's in a rough place at the moment, and we'll hope that he does well. Aaron's one of the Northern Irish guys for WC. He's been at a few events. It was his first year this year. He was all super excited to do it. We're all super glad to meet him, and yeah, we're all rooting for you, Aaron. Good luck, buddy.
Good luck, bud. So we'll take 5 seconds, and then I'll transition into stats, so we can just think.
Pain.
Yeah, all right. Now we can go into this week's stats. So there were, oh gosh, how many events this week? A number of events this week.
Loads. Really too many. There was like
too many.
4 in the UK. That's terrifying. The UK should not have this many events.
I think it actually ended up not being that many events. I think it was 7 to 9 events across the entirety that we track for 5+ round 25+ person events. But this week I guess I could count 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like 8 or 9. That's okay. But this week's top performing faction is, as every week, just still Tyranids. With 15 top 10s, 4 top 4s, and 1 GT win. The surprise of this week is actually the second place faction. So second place this week goes to Chaos Space Marines, who got 10 top 10s, 5 top 4s, and won 2 GTs. And then we have Necrons in third with 10 top 10s, 4 top 4s, and 1 GT win. And then close behind them are Craft Worlds and Eldar.
Which was Nova, by the way, just for anybody who's not.
Yeah, that was just Nova for Necrons, yes. Craft World Eldar didn't win any GTs, but took 8 top 10s and 2 top 4s. And then Marines took 7 top 10s, 4 top 4s, and then 1 event. Otherwise, we had Sisters winning an event, Tau winning an event, and Harlequins winning 2 events to cap out the week.
Yeah, it's good to see Chaos Space Marines start to get that representation. I know Vic VJ from the UK swapped over to them, played Emperor's Children to a win at Battlefield Birmingham this weekend. We saw Jack Harpster win Nova, dropping 10 points in 9 games, 10 battle points. He scored 2 97s, a 96, and 6 100s.
Yeah, Chaos Space Marines have been doing real good. They've actually basically gone up in win rate every single week since the Codex release. And they're now at a 54.9% win rate for the last weekend.
Do you think it's just because people have stopped running Harkin?
I think it's because people have stopped listening to Art of War's Chaos Space Marine unit tier list and started to play the good things in the book. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. I might be wrong. Otherwise, Harlequins continue to just win at above 60%, winning 65.3% over the weekend. Totally dead faction. Don't even bother using them anymore.
Well, Harlequins.
Promise. No.
They only have like 3 players. They're just all really good, right?
It's actually part of it. They have like 2.6% for meta representation. So they've gone down in meta rep over the last few weeks.
1 in 33 players, 1 in 36 players. Yeah, it's not a lot.
Which it does mean that their over rep is a little bit out of whack from the rest of the field for the week. The meta is actually looking really healthy overall right now. Harlequins are the only faction from this week that are above a 1.5, and they're at a 2.14. And part of that is just because of their low representation, meaning that if they got more than 2 placements this weekend, which they did in the top 4 that converted into GT wins, they were going to be really high representation in the top 4. Otherwise, Chaos Space Marines are the next highest faction at they're not. Imperial Knights are, but 1.48 for Chaos Space Marines, 1.6 for Imperial Knights, and then 1.54 for Adeptus Sororitas.
All very solid factions.
Yeah, but nothing else really is striking me as completely out of whack at the moment. The balance for Nephilim at this point is actually really good, and I put all of the overrep data from the entire time period that we've been tracking for Nephilim together. And there are actually only 2 factions above a 1.5 when we look at everything since July 24th. And I mean, those are Harlequins and Tyranids.
Who are just dead factions. So
yeah,
they
totally
deserve to have a little bit higher overrep because they're completely dead and unplayable factions that you shouldn't worry about.
Oh, definitely. So they're the only 2 factions who are over a 1.5 overrep. So they're really the only 2 factions that I would think need kind of any adjustment whatsoever. No,
I wonder if 9 episodes in we should clarify that when we say a faction's dead, we're lying. I just want to make sure that that's known. If you got 9 episodes and you've not figured that when we say Tyranids and Harlequins are dead, we don't mean it. We quite understand. I know that as a Tyranids and Harlequins player, it might seem like we're being biased. No, we understand. We really do.
Yeah,
We just actually know that.
For the Harlequins, just to explain it, is because immediately after the Harlequins nerfs in the data slate, Harlequin meta representation dropped like a rock. So once they couldn't spam 9 Void Weavers anymore, Harlequins dropped by about half. Their meta representation dropped
from
13%,
right?
Well, they went from 13, and then they went down to 9, and then they went down to 3. So suddenly, every airbrushed stenciled Harlequin's army disappeared from tables really fast.
Yeah, it got converted into 50mm bases and called a Tyranid warrior, but
it's true. So that's really the meta recap. The meta is doing really well until probably the end of September, which is when everything changes because we're all going to be sad.
Should we talk about Tyranids, Necrons, Harlequins a little more? So,
sure.
What are we looking at long term? So, do you have since the Codex drop for Tyranids?
Do you want win rate or do you want
win rate? Yeah.
Sure. So if we pull up the meta dashboard, we can track win rates, summated win rates over time. So this would be at www.stat-check.com/the meta or the dash
promo.
Meta.
The dash meta. Yeah, that's not complicated at all.
Yep, I know. If you just go to www.stat-check.com, you can click on the little link at top that goes to the meta dashboard.
Can I check? How old are you?
Oh God, I'm 36. Why?
Why do you still say www at the start of websites?
Because I'm old, Innes. I'm
are
actually only 35. I even got my age wrong. That's how old I am.
Come on, man. There's not you're not clicking on a www2 website. We're not a pirate stream. It's fine. You can just say statcheck.com or statcheck.com.
I'm old enough that I was I was around and using the internet when it was AOL 1.1. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
You're lucky I don't say HTTPS.
Well, it would have been HTTP because it wouldn't have been secure yet. Have you not realized that just saying World Wide Web is faster than www yet?
No, I haven't. Are you telling me that it would be faster if I said World Wide Web?
Yeah, it is. It's 3 syllables instead of 9.
Do you know how many people would write worldwideweb.stat-check.com though?
I'm almost tempted to check and see. I'm almost tempted to check and see if that would work.
So, Innes, there's this not old, but there's a story about why they designed trash cans in Yellowstone National Park the way they do. And they designed them in such a way that the dumbest person but the smartest bear can get into them because there's significant overlap between the dumbest people and the smartest bears.
Typing World Wide Web.statcheck.com does not work. You do have to type www. I am almost kind of disappointed that that's not the thing that. Anyway, so that's kind of
we're going to go all the way back.
That's how designing Necron armies works.
We were going to talk about Tyranids first.
I know we were.
Right. So Tyranids started out when we started tracking the data for Nephilim at about a 67% win rate. They've actually gone down to 57% at this point as a summed win rate across all weeks of Nephilim. So they've gone down quite a bit. They're actually trending towards the balance range that we look for, which is 45 to 55.
What was their peak in Nachman? Do we have that?
I think their peak in Well, I can pull it up. Yeah.
Nachman post Codex, not including Crusher.
All right. Quarter 2 plus data slate. 66%. Let's add Knights. Why not? Fun. 67% is the peak.
So yeah, their peak in Nachman was about the same as their peak in Nephilim, but they've been slowly declining.
Yep.
I say declining in win rate. Their overrepresentation and their GT win rate percentage is still insanely high. But overall, Tyranid players, the weaker ones, are losing more games now than they used to be, is kind of what I take from that.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of very good Tyranid players, and then the average Tyranid players are moving on or losing more as armies like Sisters, Necrons come up.
I think a lot of players have started to shuffle over to Necrons as well. And a fair number of players I know already talking about shifting over to Votann now that book's been announced.
I mean, I've been playing Votann my whole life, so.
Yeah, ever since 2nd edition, right? When those metal minis were out.
I've been playing Votann longer than I've been alive, man. I was born a Votann player.
You were born with 2 of those bikers, 1 in each fist.
Yeah, I got 2 of my own personal little cog angels.
And so I think what we're really seeing though with Tyranid is we're still seeing like a really big lean into Leviathan still essentially. I mean, Leviathan is essentially, I think, carrying that faction to victory mostly.
It's
Uh,
the
with
only
a
sub
60,
faction. There aren't other ones. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
I mean, they've got a 61% win rate with Leviathan. Behemoth's at 58, but only 130 games played. And then Kraken is the second highest, 202 games played with 54%. And just so everybody can know, Leviathan is at 1,202 games played, so that you can know what kind of dominance you're seeing from the Leviathan
So
subfaction.
more than 10 times, like almost, like 8 times as represented as Behemoth.
Yeah, roughly six to 7 times, somewhere in there.
8 times better.
I love that math. That's my favorite math so far. Tune in for every week where you can see this kind of math done on the fly.
Okay, let's do Necrons because this kind of stat stuff is a little easier to talk about when Anthony's not here and glazing over. What are
That's true.
Necrons looking at for first round loss? Like, do we track that?
We don't have first round loss on here, but I can tell you that
You do track it, right? I'm pretty
we
sure I remember
do
you talking
track it. We do. But when we have for Necrons is actually they started at a 41% win rate when we started Nephilim. I will look in the master file, Jeremy.
Hell yeah, that's the kind of thorns I want to hear. So the reason I'm asking Nathan to talk about first round loss data is because if you take the average Necrons list and you remove the people that lose the first round because they're either generally, not very good at Necrons, they're just picking up the faction, not playing as good a build, and they lose to an optimized list. If you remove that, and then you look at like what percentage of the rest of them go on to top 10, top 4, and they're over it from that tells us like what the good Necron players are doing a little better. As Nathan looks confused as he opens files.
Average first round loss for Necrons is round 2, but that's not going to help us real quick. I'm actually not sure which tab this is good.
It's cool. I just straight dropped this on him with no warning. So
you fine. Did. I wasn't prepared in the least. I hadn't looked at our 20 tab master file of stats recently looking for first round. I will say what we've seen so far is that 41% to 55% win rate. So we've seen an increase of 14% in pure win rate. And then if you want to break it down by veteran versus casual, which is a good measure, veteran players, which are players who have been to at least one or more GTs, have a 59% win rate. Whereas casual players, those are players who are relatively new to the game and don't have GT level experience, have a 47% win rate, which is a 12% differential in win rate from veteran to casual.
Yeah. So good Necron lists do a lot better than bad Necron lists. You have to really optimize a Necron list to get a lot out of it. But once you do, they're very powerful, as we see from their very good win rates and their very good representation rates. They're hitting our overall stats have them at a 1.39 over representation with a 16.4% GT win rate. So they're winning 1 in 6 GTs with a smaller player base than Tyranids, who are winning about 20% over the past since Nephilim began.
I will say that Tyranids have started to fall off a little bit in total meta representation, just a little, but not a lot. Yeah. So they're at 8.9, so they've hovered around 8 to 9%, and Necrons are starting to hover around 10%. So we're actually starting to see a lot of Necron players, kind of who were always Necron players. Maybe that's because of the Indomitus box. Maybe, just maybe.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing that you could see.
But yeah, overall, Necrons are also almost exclusively relentlessly expansionist and Eternal Conquerors, which is the 6-inch pregame move and OBSEC and double OBSEC on everything. Or double OBSEC on OBSEC models and OBSEC on everything.
There aren't other things that you can do, right? I'm pretty sure that's just...
I mean, I'm sure there are, but it's like 1,660 games played with that, and then the next biggest is 98 games played with Novak.
Yeah, Novak is like the one that James from Goonhammer Snowflakes.
Yes. He has played all 98 of those games. It's just him.
And then it's like, is it Nihilak or Nefrek that gets the OBSEC after that?
I think it's...
I feel like Nihilak is the one.
That sounds like a thing that definitely
there's definitely another one that you can play.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Necrons are a real interesting army because they feel super oppressive when they go first and you're not playing, you're playing whatever you're playing. And then if they go second, there's just so many armies that can just kill them before they score. It's so weird. I don't like how they balanced that book at all.
No, the book is really weirdly balanced in that if the Necron player can expand out, they can score basically 15 secondary points on that first turn. And then they're going to do that basically every turn as you try to chase them into oblivion. I don't think I've ever played a game where I haven't tabled the Necron player, but they have scored like 80 points every
I've definitely had a couple, but a lot of the games with Necrons end with you tabling them and then winning, which I just don't think is an interesting design philosophy. At least so a lot of games as the Necron player feeling very samey. And I wish they would put, again, more power into the data sheets, take away the cord rerolls and just all the silly stuff, and just stop balancing armies using secondaries. Like,
balancing. I mean, at this point, I do think that Necrons are essentially 4 secondaries in a trench coat. And
they're 4 secondaries and the Silent King in a trench coat.
Sorry.
Silent King and Destroyers. I think they have like a very solid 700-point army, and then you score with the rest of it.
Yep. I think the only units that are memorable from that army are essentially the Silent King and Scorpek Destroyers. I'm sure a lot of people also like Locust Destroyers because Locusts are actually quite good as well.
Yeah, I prefer Locust to Scorpeks, and I prefer Wraiths to Scorpeks as well, personally. Which I definitely called on the show, and then Liam went and fucking ran them at WTC and smashed everybody with them. So, yeah, Wraiths over Scorpeks, guys. You fall back and charge, they're so much better.
Well, then Harpster ran essentially what is amounted to like a Scarab screening army.
He did that in the US, so it barely counts.
It's okay. I accept it.
Fifth best. They're not even like top 3 countries in the world right now.
I mean, that's also true.
Like, what? Like, I don't know, man. I put more weight on the French, on the Polish meta than I do on the American.
Oh, that's rude. I mean, true, but rude. All right. Do we want to talk about Sisters next? Another faction that's essentially four secondaries and then a couple secondaries.
Don't pretend that their kill one exists.
It's 3 secondaries and then a couple of models stapled together in a trench coat. So I'll pull up Sisters data real quick as I remember how to use my freaking.
Do you know what I find real weird about Sisters? I feel like they've all gaslit themselves into running Paragons, or they win games. Like, those are the only real. There's 2 types of Sister players: the ones that are still running, the ones that are trying to make Paragons work, and the ones that are going 4-0, 4-1, and 5-0. It's so odd. I don't get it at all.
So Sisters are actually an interesting faction because they've seen kind of a rise and fall across the course of Nephilim. And I think it's actually because Sisters are an army that can be more adapted into because of the way that the army plays. But you see Sisters starting out in Nephilim at about a 58%. They go up to 62%. And then over the last few weeks, they've actually dropped. And now they're at around a 55%. So a net minus 3% across the course of Nephilim.
Yeah. For me, it just kind of feels like Sisters are an army that you tech into by mistake by teching for Tyranids and Necrons. If you can kill Tyranids and Necrons, you can kill Sisters. And you're already trying to play that pressure wave game of just kill them before they score, or in Tyranids' case, kill them before they kill you. So there isn't really they just kind of get caught in the crossfire of Necrons do what they do better. They are still very, very powerful. They have a lot of really cool 5-phase stuff. They're still batting above 500, right? So that's definitely a sign of power. But yeah, they have some rougher matchups.
I actually think Alex Taus has summed this up best. I wonder if this will all figure it out. From Necrons, otherwise known as 1 subfaction, 1 supreme commander, and 4 secondaries in a trench coat, to Sisters, otherwise known as 1 subfaction, 1 supreme commander, and 3 secondaries in a trench coat. It's actually correct. You are correct, Alex. So that is actually the summary of the 2 factions.
Yeah, Repentia are way better than the Scorpeks. However, I need to make people aware of this, okay? Repentia are one of the best units in the game. There is a lot of space between one of the best combat units in the game and bad combat unit, where everything in the middle is still really good.
Yeah, there's also a difference between a relatively good book with relatively solid data sheets with Repentia and stuff in it, although it's being supported by Bloody Rose as a subfaction, versus Necrons, which is mostly bad data sheets, having 1 really good combat unit in it in Scorpek Destroyers.
Yeah, when you're supporting Scorpeks and Wraiths, you're doing it with like Scarabs. When you're supporting Repentia and Zephyrim, you're doing it with Morton Val and Celestine. It's just different weight classes.
Also, similar to Necrons as we talked about before, it's basically all Bloody Rose. So Bloody Rose is almost 1,200 games, and then you have Argent Shroud as the next biggest one at 80. And Argent
It's
Shroud
like
have
16 players total.
Yeah, so it's 80 games across like multiple weeks now versus 1,200. Sisters are still placing really well, but it is basically one supplement holding that whole book up.
It's not even really the supplement, it's just the data sheet. It's just the flat.
Yeah.
Plus one attack's a really good buff on stuff with 2 attacks and 3 attacks.
The AP Boast is the other thing that you can get from it as well.
Yes, which is even more relevant in a post Honor of Contempt world. Alex, Arpencia, one of the best combo units in the game, or just one of the best units in the game. I don't see how that's an overlapping circle.
Those are in fact just a Venn diagram with 2 circles that overlap.
Yeah, best combat units in the game, best units in the game. If it's one of the best combat units in the game, it's going to be one of the best units in the game. I don't know how that's not obvious.
And we can also, I guess, talk about Marine faction real quick, or we can talk about Chaos Space Marines.
Go with the one that fills your heart with the most joy.
I mean, Blood Angels always fill my heart with
No, we're not talking
joy.
about Blood Angels.
We can't talk about fine. Then we're going to go with the next option that fills my heart with joy.
That's fine.
Which is Chaos Space Marines.
What I actually wanted to do was take away the one that filled your heart with the most joy.
Oh, you
should have seen that coming.
I should have, but I walked right into it instead. Chaos Space Marines are actually my faction that's the favorite for stats tracking purposes because they're in the Imperial Fist Crimson Fist tier at the start of Nephilim, and then are all the way at the other end of it at the point in Nephilim that we're at now.
Oh, in the top right, No, I have to do this the other way. In the top right quadrant of problem.
Yeah. So they went basically from 0 to villain is basically what happened. So
and if you check out the new tabs on the meta page, you can even see that progression in real time on the tableau.
Yep. So I guess I could actually just post this. I'll share my screen so everybody can kind of see this.
Yeah, do it. Let's look at the graph. If you are listening to us on a podcast right now, I would recommend checking out statcheck.com/themeta and then going onto the trending tab so you can see the progression of Chaos Space Marines.
0% win rate, 5 games played. So just one player back on the 4th of July. This is the very start of Nephilim, up to a 48% summed win rate just this last week.
Okay, so they're not actually going to get the problem territory.
They're not quite into problem territory, but their individual week win rate has gone up every single week, which is starting to buoy the faction upwards. They're probably starting to plateau a little bit as they get into the summed win rate. So you'll probably see them get over
Codex
50.
Release?
I think July is the Codex release date. July 3rd-ish.
That doesn't sound right.
It might have been. I don't remember anymore, Innes.
No, me neither. I'm just trying to think what WC cutoff was. Basically,
so if it was the same as Nephilim, then it is July 3rd to
24th, right?
So I think early July, and then 24th is our cutoff point because that's when it was fully in effect, Nephilim rules.
Right, okay. So, yeah, probably about there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we see it just kind of steadily increase. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go with games played jumping from 56 to 250. That's the release weekend. That's when they were first legal. So, yeah.
So the first week that they were legal, though, we did see them not really played at all. But that was because of rules cutoffs more than anything else.
Yeah. And then you see the realized Art of War's tier list was bad jump on the weekend of the 14th to the 21st. Yep. That's when they all got Harkin from their lists and started playing Emperor's Chosen and Emperor's Children and Creation of Bile.
Yep. So when everybody decided that they actually could be smart and play good things instead of being snowflake chaos players who play only the things that they love most.
Perfect.
Although if you do love playing mutilators and you really want to make them work in your Night Lords list, you should definitely slide into Anthony's DMs and tell him how you're a long-standing Night Lords player who would love to have mutilators in their list.
And make sure you start your email with "Hi, Anthony." It's very important that you do it that way. Okay, I'm going to do the plug section, and then we're going to move on to some more general discussions, and then we'll probably do a longer question and answer section this week, just because I don't have Anthony to bounce off of with meta stuff. No offense to Nathan, but it's just not quite the same. So we've done. Are
you saying that I'm not the same as a top 10 player in the world? In it,
I am. Yeah,
I'm offended.
I'm not saying it to be nasty. I'm saying it because I want to make sure we lead into specialists. So. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. This is episode 9 of Stat Check. We are, again, been doing this for almost 2.5 months now. It is outstanding, the response we've been getting, and we're so super thankful for everybody for being with us for this journey. If you would like to support the show, there are a number of ways you can do that, and we appreciate every single way that you do this. The first and easiest you can do is you can chuck us a like or a subscription on YouTube or whatever your podcast feed of choice is. That really helps us out with discoverability, with making sure people know that we're out there and that people click on it and they see that other people are enjoying, and that makes them want to engage as well. If you have the time, drop us a comment on whatever your platform of choice is as well. That's also super helpful for us. We do our best to answer any comments that go down. If we're not available to answer them at the time, we'll try to pass it on to somebody who is. And we love interacting with all of you guys in whatever way, shape, or form. If you're in the YouTube chat or the Twitch chat, I believe we are now live streaming on Twitch. That's another great way to do it. If you have the resources available, we would also really appreciate your support at patreon.com/statcheck. That is where you'll get access to our Patreon Discord, where you can ask questions of the live stream, which we will do our best to answer every week. If you can't do that, then being on the live stream at the other time is the way that you can do that for free. So we try to keep that option open to everybody because we really appreciate all of you guys, and we want to make sure that we can give back to you in whatever way we can. So either the Patreon or live with us, and you can ask us questions that we will do our best to answer. You can also get access to some really cool stuff like the bonus content. So this week, Anthony is going to be releasing an interview with Steven, who is an Alpha Legion player who's been doing really well in the United States. So we're going to be getting a look at a different way of playing Chaos Space Marines. We should be having some interviews coming out, some prep for LGT. We're going to be doing our WC draft review this week. So if you're interested in any of that or any of the previous bonus content, you can get access to that through the Patreon as well.
We also have a whole big channel that's just us talking about bonus content that we're working on. So, and bonus content that we're proposing that you guys all get to vote on what you would actually like to see. There will probably be a hobby stream live for patrons exclusively on the Discord, along with other content as well.
And I'm looking at setting up play video games with us once a month kind of thing as well, just to have a bit of a chance to actually do that, because I don't play enough video games at the moment. I have massively fallen out of it, and I enjoy doing it because of the social side of things. But I stopped playing with like my group of friends I played League of Legends with a long time ago, and since then it's just not been a thing I do, and I miss it. So we're going to try and do a bit of that because it's good fun, just chilling and shooting the breeze with a couple of drinks on a Friday night or whatever. So we're going to be looking at doing that. If you can't support us in that way, don't worry about it. We really appreciate everything that you do for us anyway, and thank you for being with us as we continue doing what we do. That'll probably do. That seems right.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I didn't forget any of the links this time because I just didn't say them.
Do we want to, since it's the title of the episode, briefly talk about Votann stuff?
That was the idea, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's do it. Let's talk about the meta being...
Give us the lowdown, Nathan. What's your Cliff's Notes?
Everything is terrible is what the Cliff's Notes are. I mean, so what would happen if you gave a whole army armor of contempt, essentially, but you can't reroll wound rolls against them. You gave them a bunch of weapons called beam weapons that draw lines like templates and can hit units multiple times, including units in between them, and cause mortal wounds. What if also you could auto wound things using judgment tokens that never fall off of units, and it's a 6+ to auto wound, counting as a 6 to wound, with 1 judgment token, on a 5+ counting as a 6 to wound with 2 judgment tokens, or a 4+ auto wounding and counting as a 6 with 3 judgment tokens.
Those sound really powerful. I bet they're quite hard to get on units.
Oh man, if only it was hard to get them on units. You can get at least 1 from a call. There are stratagems to get more. If they do actions, they get a token on them. If they kill a character, they get a token on them. If they kill units,
just unit.
Well, you get more if it's a character. I believe.
Oh, you get
like
more
2 or 3.
Right. Okay.
Yes. Happy Grunt in the chat. Dwarfs are a mistake.
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh yeah, and if they dare to hold an objective,
they also get a judgment token.
Yeah, you get to pick an enemy unit that's on an objective and get a token on it once per turn.
My best summary of Votann is: what if you took the special rules from essentially every other faction, slapped them into one faction, and also made them better? Yeah, is basically what at the other end you get is Votann.
The thing that confused me the most is when I was reading their chapter traits. So they've got 5 league. They're called league customs, and the one that's comfortably like the 4th best is just Better Bloody Rose. It's +1 attack and +1 strength on the charge instead of +1 AP. It's just Better Bloody Rose. It's like not as good as the other ones. Not as good as some of the customs.
And their best one is very good, and it gives you an army-wide invulnerable save depending on what their normal save is. So they're big trucks that they previewed, the Moonlander looking things that have multiple beam weapons or Magna Rail rifle on them. Get a 2-up basic save with Armor of Contempt and no reroll wounds. And then in Ymir, they get a 4-up invulnerable save. So you got a 2-up and a 4-up invuln, and you can't reroll wounds against them, and they have Armor of Contempt.
Yep. Yeah, their psychic discipline they have is literally a mix of everyone's best stuff thrown at random would be better. Yeah, they got Null Zone, they got Generate SCP, they've got a staff that lets you do a psychic action. I'm pretty sure they've got like a +1 toughness power. They have a +1 toughness chapter tactic. Like they just have so much stuff. Basically, the most worrying thing for me from this has been that every single time I've spoken to a top player about it, they've all thought something else was broken, and they've all been smashing everybody they've looked at with it when they've been testing it, and it's all different. So, like the Dice Down guys were super high on Great Arthurian League with Uther, and some of the Polish guys I was speaking to were like, "Yeah, Magna Rails," and then the guys from like Anthony massively high on Beams and Ymir and Berserkers, and every single one of them is just rolling everybody, or not. It's not even close. It's ridiculous. I mean, the entire book is insane.
The Berserkers, I think the only thing in that book that isn't good are their secondaries, which are just kind of okay.
No, the secondaries are really good too. They're just kind of slow. They're not like score 100 points turn 1 secondaries. But there's one where it's like every time you kill a unit with judgment tokens on you get points, and then if they have units with judgment tokens alive at the end of the game, you lose points. But it's not capped. So if you get 30 points from that secondary and then lose 5 at the end of the game, it doesn't matter. So
that's fair.
Like, sure, go get,
I actually
go
didn't
get your
consider
30,
that.
buddy.
I actually didn't consider that it wasn't capped, so that actually is a problem.
Yeah, it caps at 15 in that like you can't score more than 15 from it, but like you can go well past it and then take the reductions afterwards.
Well, I take it back. That secondary is not as bad as I thought it was. I made an oopsies.
Yeah, it doesn't just stop when you hit 15 points and then you take reductions at the end. No,
so they also got my favorite rule that they gave them is they gave Magna Rails that on a 6 to wound cause spillover damage with 2d3 plus 6, I think, for damage on the big Magna Rail rifle.
Something stupid
that can also be carried by infantry, but does d3 plus 6 damage or something like that. And to me, there are like several rules that immediately I think would need to be changed in order for this faction to be balanced. One of them is that it essentially gave Hail of Doom to an army wide on all of their weapons, but better because it's more like enriched rounds, and Hail of Doom had a baby.
And the tanks get it instead of just the small guns. Okay, so yeah, it's 2d3 plus 6 damage on the heavy magma rail cannon on the Hecaton
and then
Fortress.
D3 plus 3 for the infantry Magna Rail. The only bad thing about the Magna Rails is that their AP is not as good as...
They're AP4, they're not AP6.
They're still AP4, so if your opponent has Armor of Contempt, they might still have a save and cover. If you don't have it being shot at you from a vehicle or from an infantry unit that ignores light cover, both of which have upgrades that allow you to ignore light cover.
Yeah. So what I actually want to talk about with Votann is I think people are underestimating beams, and then we'll move on because I don't think there's much we gain about this because I've not actually put them on the table yet. I've seen people play them, but you know, their context is a thing. Beam has been around in the game for a while. It's a weapon mechanic that exists on like Mortarian's pistol and a few other random places, and it's generally like kind of cool, but a little overwhelming. Like you'll maybe remember it was Mortarian flies forward and then pops his pistol off at like you shoot the guy behind the guy you're going to charge. The difference is that almost everything that has that kind of beam mechanic at the moment is a primary combat unit where it's not worth giving up positioning in order to set up beam plays, or they're pretty short range, like 18-inch range pistols and you know all this kind of stuff. Where Mortarian, you're not going to make your charge 2 inches longer, so you can set up a beam shot with his 1 strength 8 minus 3 damage shot. It's just not worth it. You're better taking the much more reliable charges because that's when Mortarian does his damage. The tanks can have 10 shots of that. You don't need to position them for combat. They just position purely for the beam rule, which means it's just like all the experience you have with playing against whatever kind of beams you have, whether it's from a Psyker or from Mortarian, like, you know, the Fury of the Emperor, Psychic Power for Adept for Guard that no one's ever used in their life, or Bloodlance for Blood Angels. They're not the same context. You can't evaluate them in anything remotely the same way. And I've seen people talking about it in that context. Not a lot of people, but it's something that's come up, and I don't know if something people are thinking about. Is that it's just more turn pistol mechanic, but it's that 10 times per tank. That's a lot of firepower. Even just hitting it up on like 1 or 2 units is a lot of damage output. And the issue I have with it is it's not priced as though it's going to hit 2 or 3 units. When you look at it on the data sheet, so your option is like you get the bolt cannon, which is 2 shots at 622, 36-inch range, or you can trade that out for 2 shots at 722 with an 18-inch range. If that was just a straight option that you had, pay 5 points for +1 strength, and you half your range, you probably wouldn't take it. If it was a free alternative, you'd consider it. When it's a 5-point upgrade that also gives you the potential of doubling or tripling your firepower output, it's not a comparison. They're just different weight classes of weapon. If it was, pay 5 points to make your gun heavy 6, but you have to fire, or to give you 3 heavy 2 guns, you take it every time. And I think that's what people are disavowing here, is that you will set beam up. It just will happen.
I think
especially in armies like Ymir with +4 range on beam.
I think the other thing to talk about very briefly, as well as the stratagem support that Beam's got, Ymir is also good because they have a stratagem to proc mortal wounds on beams. And then there's also another one that generates additional hits.
Every time. So the Ymir stratagem is when something is hit by a beam, it takes a mortal wound. And then the beam on the tank can hit up to 4 times for 2 shots. Yep. If it shoots something over 1508, it gets hit twice. So then it would take 4 mortal wounds.
Yep.
And the other stratagem is Core Buster, I believe it's called, which is you pick a target, and every time it's hit by a beam on a 4+, it takes a mortal wound to a cap of 6. So it's kind of Wrath of Mars. But when you're talking out like 10 beams that hit on 3s rolling or 2s into a target from 1 tank, you're very reliably with Ymir. You can deliver 10 mortal wounds to a hard target plus all the line damage you do. And the other thing to remember is that beam, anything under the line is just hit. It doesn't you don't make a hit roll against it or like that. It's just hit, which means it bypasses any opportunity to use like defensive stratagems. So like if you have a -1 damage stratagem or transhuman stratagem, you don't get the opportunity to use it because you're never targeted. So that's something to be very wary of as well.
The other thing the only thing that GW I think did think of is that those targets have to be valid targets for the beams.
Yes.
So you can't snipe characters with beams if they would normally not be able to be targeted by the tank, and you can't snipe obscured units if you normally couldn't shoot them. So you have to be able to have shot the unit in order for the beam to actually hit them.
But it's a real bad time, for example, to be completely unobscurable demons.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely are going to be real sad when that Bellicor, who is suddenly going to take 10 mortal wounds plus 10 beams, because even though they're -1 to hit, a lot of those are just going to auto wound. And if somebody has a big target, they're going to focus 3 judgment tokens on you, and they're just going to auto wound on a 4.
Or you're playing lots of squishy Harlequin boats that all get lined up on because they all measure to the base. There's so many things that can go wrong with this mechanic. I just don't think it's well designed.
No.
I don't think this is the kind of thing that armies should have access to in bulk, unfortunately. But they sure do. So we'll see where it goes. Maybe we're all wrong and they don't end up being a problem, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, this book screams badly playtested to not playtested is what because immediately the reaction from every top level player that I saw was, I'm switching to Votann, I'm running 3 trucks. And maybe running 30 Hearthkin Berserkers or whatever.
That Berserker data sheet is so insane. Remember how we were talking about Repentia and there being a lot of space in worse than Repentia to be an insanely good unit? Hearthkin Berserkers are not as good as Repentia. Doesn't matter at all. They're 2 points more than an Intercessor, and they have a Thunderhammer that all can all wound on 4s to hit.
I think they're actually better than Repentia.
Because they've got a
feel no pain against damage 1 weapons.
It's mostly that they're a lot slower. They're a lot slower. They don't have a native invulnerable save. Yes, they can go in the tanks, but they are genuinely, as a unit, very cumbersome. It just kind of doesn't matter because they're really cheap and everything else in the army supports them really well. But as a data sheet, I don't think they're stronger than Repentia. I think Repentia
they do also have native fight on death, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
I mean, Repentia have that for for 2CP. So
yeah.
Why do
the naked dwarves do get void armor?
No idea. Really don't understand that.
Well, we probably should just transition to questions, or we'll just be depressed for the next 10 minutes.
I mean, we can do that anyway.
We can be depressed all the time, regardless of the situation, but we can transition.
Hey, how dare you out me like that? Yeah, okay. So, yeah,
Join
so
our
we are
patron
gonna
to help fund Innes's mental health care. Yes. Don't do that.
don't do that because I'm not gonna get help.
There's not enough help, unfortunately, but we may continue. We've got a
Okay,
lot of
so
questions actually this week.
we have
If you want to go
loads.
through them, and then in YouTube, if you want to ask questions, we will also get to your questions in YouTube or Twitch chat, because I know
Also,
that we're also broadcasting to Twitch now, in case anybody hasn't noticed.
a very important reason to be in the Discord is that I do always try to make a meme to go with the posting questions. I'm gonna see if this shows up well on camera. It probably doesn't.
It doesn't, but it is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and it says at the top, "Fuck around," and then on the next one it says "Find out," and then at the bottom it says "Beg."
That's basically dwarves. Okay, let's do questions. Why use many profiles when beam? No idea.
You should just use Beam. Some of the Hunter weapons are kind of interesting, but I don't think Hunter does anything.
Hunter is just a mechanic that means you can't advance to shoot them. Infantry can move and don't take the heavy weapon penalty, and tanks don't take the minus one to hit in combat. It's just no rule.
Yeah.
Because
It's like
there
the
isn't
DACA,
a no rule weapon in the game. Well, DACA's just like rapid fire, but it's not exactly half shots or double shots. It's really weird. It was weird that there was never that there's not a basic gun in the game. But hey, this is what it is. Could things like Goth Rush Build or Blood Angels tools quick enough to try and mitigate some Votann shooting? Yeah, but you're not going to mitigate the Berserkers.
If you can tag their vehicles, it does help, because the beams can't shoot out of engagement range. They only shoot into engagement range, and you don't get to draw lines. But the Berserkers will come out, and so you may like turn off their shooting for a turn. Like if you're Harlequins, you're probably going to charge their land via their, I can't even remember what they're called anymore. Their giant buggies with your little
The
transport,
Hecaton
with your
Land
Star Weavers.
Fortress.
You're going to charge their Hecaton land fortresses with your Star Weavers to prevent them from shooting you with beam weapons all over the place. You just are going to, because that's the only way that you're going to survive past turn 2.
Yeah. Very cool. And then if they have the Magna weapons, they'll just shoot you with that instead and one-shot you on a 4+.
True.
Okay. Can Night Lords?
Can Night Lords what?
I don't know.
You're gonna have to clarify, Jake, in Discord. Can Night Lords? I guess that was just to troll Anthony.
It was that was the. Everybody who calls it a Hekashonk deserves hellfire.
Can Votann deal with Votann? Asks Innes of Anthony in our Discord chat,
And
where
we'll
we
never
ask
know.
questions. The answer
Sam
is that
asked
game
a question. Oh, actually, Sam asked a question last week that I said I was going to answer. Try and answer this week.
Ooh.
When you're practicing configuring your list, how do you balance testing your list for the upcoming events versus trialing out or stress testing different unique units, high fleets and powers, etc.? So when you're practicing, how do you balance getting what you've got now practiced versus making changes to it?
I tend to go by the philosophy that you should make very small changes between matches if you're going to practice towards improving a list, because a lot of people will make sweeping changes to their army, and then you don't know which of like the 5 or 6 changes that you may have made at that point contribute to your change in success or lack thereof in the next match. So honestly, you should find like your base list and then tweak little things across practice matches, not big things.
I'm going to go completely different on this one because I practice playtest very differently to Nathan, apparently. I like to take a core that I have and then just like drill down, get into that. So when I started with Tyranids, I spent maybe like 10, 15 games finding a core of a list that I liked, which ended up being double Tyrant, and then like it's got its own tropes, it's got a Tyrant Guard, like blah, 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 all the really boring stuff. And then the other 1,000 points of the list, I was just like, every game I was like, right, let's try a different 1,000 points and a different 500 points, and just kept cycling through things and then pulling out the bits that performed like consistently across different builds. So that was how I ended up on like the Pyrovores, and then the Pyrovore pod came in because to support them and the Harpies that I was running, and blah blah blah. And you just kind of kept iterating in different ways down the line. And while I'm doing that, I'm building up the repetitions on the core of the list, which is the Hive Tyrant. How do I use her properly? How do I interact that with the Harpies in this game? How do I make sure she interacts well with the Tervigon I ran in the next game? And blah blah blah. and you just kind of drill down on the fundamentals of the faction while you're doing one thing. You find different strategies and different mechanics to work that way, and that's how you end up with a list that you can adapt over tournaments and metas. Because you know what you can plug in, what you can plug out, what works into certain lists, what doesn't work into other ones. If you're just trying to focus on one tournament because it's the be all and end all, like WTC, just play a list. Just don't worry about it. Play one list, get real confident with it. If you're trying to build for a season, which is very different, try and I like to work in modules. So like, this is a 300-point module that I can swap in. This is a 300-point module I can swap out if I don't like it for this one. So it was kind of like I had a straight swap of two current effects, two swords of power force, and a drop pod was the same points as two harpies and a drop pod. So I would just swap those in and out depending on what I wanted for the meta, and then I would make some small tweaks for like any new list that came out. And that's a way to do it that I really enjoy.
I think if you have more like the ability to do more practice reps, that's the way to go. Like if you can do lots of practice, I think your route is the correct route because you can practice lots of different chunks. So I think it just depends on perhaps how much practice time you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether you do small changes, because I make small changes because also I don't get as many practice games in as probably you or Anthony do. I mean, I know that for certain that I don't. And I think if you guys have lots of practice reps, then you can make those larger module changes and you can track those better over time.
Yeah, there's also another couple of things. If you're only going to play 5 games, just pick a list. You are going to get less out of making an incremental change halfway through. Like if you play 2 games of the list and then you swap and play 3 more games of another one, unless that change improves your win rate significantly because you found a fundamental flaw with the original list, you're just shuffling deck chairs. Just concentrate on what you're going to have to play. You do not have time to fix. You're going to need to fix play issues more than you're going to need to fix that. And the second one is just steal things. Genuinely, people in 40K are so fucking hung up on looking original, being original, making clever decisions. Do you know what works just as well? The surprise is not an element for you. People do not look at your list and be like, "Oh, I've seen that play before." People look at your list and go, "This does this," or "This does that." Nobody goes, oh, "This is brand new," or "This is, oh my god, this is that list." Blah blah blah. No one cares. Just steal a list. It's genuinely fine. No one gives a damn. If people give you shit for it, it's probably just because they're being funny. Don't worry about it. The element of surprise is fake anyway. Just don't do it.
Don't worry about net listing. Net listing shouldn't be a pejorative. Just use what works and then figure out how to make it work for you. Like it's different if you like don't have the models for a list, or if maybe you just want to make a change to it because you like a unit, than to just not do it at all.
Yeah.
And
but
at the end of the
unless
day,
you have the next Leviathan, just you don't need to hide lists. You don't need to hide tactics. You don't need to hide strategies. And net listing is another thing on that line. Just copy things.
We do have another question for tormenting Anthony.
That's fine. Anthony's being tormented by his migraines, so
it's true. I'm trying to get through this chat to figure out where there are actual.
Yeah, every question that's like for Anthony, I'm like, I'm just gonna leave that. I'm just gonna leave that. Can shooty or weight of fire orcs exist in current 40K, or are they missing something key like the industrial weapons boost GSC gets? I'd argue GSC are missing something key as well. Staying power on units that aren't bikes, but that's here nor there. I think GSC or orcs just kind of. I don't know, man. I feel like they just kind of need a better morale mechanic for infantry squads, because the mechanic they have at the moment of just ignore combat attrition just isn't really good enough. They're one of those other armies that just needs a point drop on a boy, like 1 point on boys and a better morale mechanic, and I think orcs should be in a better place. I don't know if they'd be in a great place still. They have some pretty good secondaries. Get to the good bits is insane. Very, very easy to score. I did not realize that you could do that on the same objective 5 times with a squad of grots for 15 points. That's real good.
Yeah, orcs have good have like a couple of good secondaries and just not as many good data sheets as they need to make it work.
Yeah, and a lot of orc stratagems just should be 1 point less.
100%.
Is it a good idea to use faction secondaries as another balancing knob to adjust?
Yes.
No, I think it's a terrible idea. I think I don't think faction secondaries should be a thing in match play, to be honest. I think every army should be scoring the same way, and then you should the army's differences go out there. It's another balancing knob, but what that actually means is it's another thing that's turned to 11 that has absolutely no controls on it.
I agree that it's actually probably more of a problem in like the way that Games Workshop balances the game, and that they're kind of slow to adjust things. So you'll end up with factions who have all of the good secondaries like Necrons currently do, but their data sheets are suffering, which is obscuring the problem that their data sheets are bad, but their performance is good because their secondaries are ranked to 11.
Like, yes, you can technically say that making Treasures of the Aeons, which is your opponent picks 3 objectives, you get points for holding them at the end of your turn. Making that a No Mercy, No Respite, which is the grind them down in no prisoners category secondary, is technically a balancing decision. I would call it outright a mistake instead. But yes, that is technically about. You could theoretically, you could give Tyranids to the last and an exact copy of To the Last in Warcraft, and that would be a balancing decision. That doesn't mean it's one I think is a good way to approach balance. And I think what they've done is more that they've given Necrons 2 battlefields of Primacy secondaries. I realize that saying, give Tyranids 2 to the last is an extreme example of that, but I don't think giving Necrons Stranglehold and Third the Brave, Purge the Vermin is, I don't think it's any different. So
no. I also think that Alex has continued our trench coat analogy correctly for orcs. Orcs have only 1 good secondary, an okay Supreme Commander, and 3 to 4 sub-factions, which is a suboptimal trench coat form factor. Not enough things to fill out a trench coat, unfortunately.
They've enough. Got like the sub-factions at the feet. You only really need 2.
All right, where do we go next?
Will you be attending any events post LOV release with anything other than LOV? Let's see how much my LVO flights are.
I'm not going to play League of Votann, even though I really wanted to initially. And part of it is that it's not that I want to be special and not play the broken faction, but part of it is that the faction is so broken that it takes all my enjoyment out of it because there's no way to express anything other than I fire 10 beams at your army from 3 different Hekachonks and all of your army dies.
Well, and Nathan's just really hoping that he can pick it up on the cheap once everybody who bandwagon sells.
Once that first round of nerfs happen and League of Votann join Harlequins in the dumpster, I definitely won't be buying all the Hekachonk land fortresses for 50% MSRP.
Should I paint my League of Votann in Deep Rock Galactic colors, Moonbase Alpha colors, or Planet Express colors? Planet Express.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles colors.
Planet Express.
Obviously.
Planet Express, and make sure you paint your call up as Professor Farnsworth.
That's acceptable too.
Since GW decided to end times 40k with Leagues of Votann, what else do you want them to add to increase the fuckness?
Oh, can you repeat that question? I got distracted by Alex making me laugh in chat.
Since GW decided to end times 40k with the Leagues of Votann, what else do you want them to add to increase the fuckness? Crusher and Leviathan supplement.
Yeah, why not? Just do it. I give up. Just do it.
That's a playtest game I'd have to watch.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, yeah, man, you got all these beams, but my 3 hive tyrants do not care. They cannot be shots. And it's bad. Yeah. Jerry says, I actually had a nightmare that the latest White Dwarf had a Crusher in it.
Somebody recently was telling me they should undo the Dark Technomancer, Kronos, and Talos nerfs, and like a part of me died inside at the mention of it, but also a part of me was also thinking that it might not be such a bad thing in the current environment anymore.
You give Talos and Kronos core back, and then you make the Army of Renown work like the Advec one, where it doesn't get rid of your chapter trait, and you unnerf Dark Technomancers and Artists of Flesh.
God. Whoa! It is. I mean, I got really excited because I have all that painted Drukhari that I'd love to play paint engines again with. But also, I got sad at the same time.
Manny's 179 Frax list from Unconquerable, which just casually has enough shooting to table Tau armies with 35 Ossifactors and 9 Hex Rifles, is a war crime that should not be permitted to be played in tournaments. And if you're playing Dark Eldar, you should probably just play that list. It's better than everything else you're doing.
I would have to paint so many racks, and I don't want to do it.
And you'd have to put Ossifactors on 35 of them, yeah. But you know how the whole thing with like killing Rat Cord is you're like, okay, so I'm going to kill like 12 from each squad, so they fill morale, and it's like another 5 guys from each squad, yeah? Okay, so if you do that to this list, it doesn't lose a single gun.
So it's what I'm really hearing is that Manny was so traumatized by his previous experiences that he's decided to make the list again, but more immune to morale.
Yeah, he cut the core of the Archon and put in enough shooting that he was just like killing knights with it, with his poison strength 2 weapons, downing downing like an armiger a turn with guns in a rack army.
Definitely doable.
Yeah, they're strength 2, AP 3, damage 2, poison 2 plus. They hit on 3 ruling ones, and there's 35 of them.
Yeah. You just have to pop the poison strat one time on one of those units to really start hammering away at stuff.
You don't even have to do that, man.
I mean, if you want to wound them on 2s, you do.
Oh, the knights, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
What are some of the nuances of deployment to keep in mind, like terrain, matchups, and mission, etc.? What are some other mission-related decisions should someone keep in mind when wanting to go from a fine player to a good player? I understand that these are broadly open-ended questions, but any advice is better than none since I'm not terribly great at these. Do you want to go with your first thoughts on that one, and then I'll try and do mine?
I think it's hard to break down the nuances of deployment in all situations because that's like a podcast episode in and of itself. Like each of those things is a podcast episode with Anthony and Innes talking about it more so than me. But for me, like every single mission, I think about my deployment differently, and into every faction, I think about my deployment differently because some opponents want to come towards you and some opponents don't want to come towards you. Some opponents you need to deploy very aggressively against, like Necrons, you probably want to deploy more aggressively against because you need to push out really fast to take them off of objectives. But if you do that into other armies like Blood Angels, if you deploy aggressively into Blood Angels with some armies, Blood Angels will just take your whole day and ruin it by coming across the field and murdering you in the first turn if you're not careful.
Okay.
And that changes depending on the army you're playing too, because some armies like Harlequins you need to spread out really quickly, and some armies you're not want to do that.
Okay, I'm gonna try and do my super high level approach to this, like not like high level in terms of gameplay, but like the very cliff notes of how I approach deployment and like the first turn of the game. If you think about like a network or a nodes where every objective is connected to every other objective, right? If you imagine any 3 objectives, there's a triangle connecting them. Okay. So you might have like if you're playing like secure missing artifacts where there's like one in the middle and then one in each of the 4 quarters, there will be triangles on the board. So you can either play like the bottom triangle, the top right, the right triangle, the left triangle, the top triangle. The player who goes first will have a preference on which triangle they want the game to be played in. The player who goes second will have a preference on which triangle they want to play the game. Or each player will have a preference. The player who goes first usually dictates which of those 3 triangles or which of the important ones is the one where most of the game is played. So a lot of the time it'll be your home objective and the 2 objectives you can reach comfortably with threat range. Sometimes it'll be the objective in your opponent's deployment zone that you're going to go and take off them because you have to be denying them primary because you're playing a list that doesn't have good secondaries. Whatever, that is where the game is going to be played. When I look at deploying, I try to look at where my opponent's pressure, like which of those areas of the board they want to look at, and which ones I want to look at, and then try to put your slowest stuff, the stuff with the slowest response times, with the easiest response to both. The stuff with the fastest response times with response to one of them, and then the other, and then so that they can spend 1 turn moving and then 1 turn being active there, and then your slow stuff. So that's your Abaddon goes as close to both as possible, so that he is always threatening and always active. Then you have to add in considerations like, where can I deploy stuff safely? So, if you're playing Bellicor, he's probably going to go behind a wall. If you're playing on like a Nova L, you're going to want to put him behind there. If that slows his response time a little bit, that's the price you pay for going first, or for wanting to be safe. Then you bring in considerations like, do I have a win plan if I go second here? If I go second and I just get I'm just going to get tabled anyway, at which point it's too late for Bellicor to do anything. At that point, deploy him on the line. Like there's nothing, you're not losing anything. Though that's like the super high level of it is try to figure out where you need to play the board based on objectives, because that's where you're going to have to play the game. Try to figure out where your opponent wants to play the game and set up responses for if they get to dictate the flow. Put your units in priority based on how quickly they can get to where you need them to be, based on both you and your opponent. So that's a little bit of game theory there. You have to make evaluations. That's going to be different from game to game and opponent to opponent. Sometimes your fast stuff needs to be very, very well positioned to pressure your game plan because your game plan is weaker than your opponent's. Sometimes you will just deploy on the line because you know that if you go second, they can't respond to you because they're playing all melee Bloody Rose and they can't actually threaten you turn 1. Whatever. There are so many permutations on this that it's impossible to get the nuance conveyed. But that's the kind of the things. And then the last one is, do I need to be safe? And if I don't need to be safe, how aggressive can I be?
Yeah, I
That's
think for
like
me,
the highest level I can go while
that's
still being vaguely useful, I think.
that's amazing advice. Part of the problem for me is that I haven't learned how to take like the experience that I have and like turn it into like a system, like more of a systemized way of thinking, and that is like listening to you talk about it made a lot more sense. I always also deploy as if I'm going second, which maybe isn't the best way of doing things, but I always deploy as if I'm going second because most of the armies that I play don't have redeploy stratagems. If you have a redeploy stratagem, you can do all sorts of stupid shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And that's another thing that you like the high level to consider. If you're going, sometimes your game plan is just if I go second, I'm going to lose this stuff, and that doesn't
mhm,
matter. Like when I'm playing the Tyrannids with the Harpies, my game plan is when I'm playing an army that's going to kill my Harpies turn one, is that I deploy everything else as stupidly as possible to respond to them going for the Harpies, so that I have a response to that because I know I'm going to lose them. How do
right.
I make that an advantage, or how do I make that less of an issue? And that's
Yeah.
kind of getting into it. Alex says power move is to choose 3 objectives to make a giant triangle that also clips the middle objective. If you're playing against Necrons, that's probably the triangle you're going to play. You're going to let them have their home objective, and you're going to try and kill them off of 3 objectives a turn and not let them score primary. That's what you're going to have to do. So yeah, that is a way you can absolutely end up having to play the game. There is almost ever you will sometimes play all 5 objectives or all 6 objectives. That is genuinely a thing you'll do some games because you just don't have another option. That generally happens. Generally, the bigger the triangle that you are for, or the bigger the area of relevance for the game that you have to play in, the weaker position you'll be in because your resources are stretched thinner. That's why stuff like when I was playing that German guard list I played a couple of weeks ago, I had old one eye on the list because my list is not great. It doesn't have very fast response time. It's pretty slow. But old one eye can collapse a flank my opponent doesn't put enough resources on by himself.
Yep.
And so old one eye with a little bit of support, like you give him a squad gaunt so he doesn't get shot, and he would play 300 points of I'm going to hold the bottom right objective in vital intel or in data scar salvage by myself, and anything that comes over there, I'm going to run between objectives, punch it and run away, and punch it and run away, and punch it and run away, and then you play the other three. You play the other three.
Yep.
Sometimes your home objective is completely safe and you don't have to worry about it. Sometimes it's not. These are all very different permutations.
Yeah, if you're playing against a Gene Stealer cult player, for example, you probably should always consider your home objective as just not safe.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that's definitely you could drill into this for hours, and I think a YouTube video which is like got models on the table is probably going to be better for that. But that's kind of how I approach deployment and turn one.
Sounds like a bonus content idea to me.
Oh, it's so much work. It would be so much effort. That's like
We're just
go
we're
and
just
talk
here
to
to
your
make it so
40K
Innis
coach about it.
we're just never gonna have Ennis sleep ever again as he puts models on tables and tries to go through every permutation of deployment for an army.
I think me ignoring Jonathan's message is better than responding to it.
Probably.
But I technically have responded to it by ignoring it, so that should tell him what I said. Paul, I'm not live reacting to those images. And that's a joke. Okay, let's have a quick look through the YouTube comments.
You have basically 5 seconds in order to get into the comments to ask us a question while we try to find questions.
Yep. So if you post a comment between now and like the next 4 minutes, we'll take a look at it. Otherwise, we'll be calling it after that. But we're going to run for another 5-10 minutes.
There really is just one question for you so far, which is how is the GSC bike list playing, and is it fun, aggressive, etc.?
There's another one actually. There's one about Chaos Space Marine shooting.
Which one do you want to talk about?
I'll do they're next to each other, so this is really easy. How is the GSC bike list playing? Fun / aggressive, etc. So the GSC bike list that he's talking about is Eric Lathris's WTC list that I played at the Unconquerable Invitational this weekend. So broad strokes, it is 24 bikes and 6 wolf quads, along with a bunch of scoring and 2 big squads of mining laser, seismic cannon neophytes, and then character support, no psychers. It is very, very low to the ground. It's a lot of stuff that doesn't hide particularly well, but has a very big footprint. But you get a lot of redeploy shenanigans, you get pre-game moves, you get blips, all that good stuff. So you have basically like infinite response time to whatever your opponent's doing. It plays, from my experience, your secondaries are just better than literally everybody's, including Necrons. Like it was hilarious looking at my secondary game and being like, oh, I just score the points without doing anything. Necrons have to come to me, so Necrons are going to be the aggressor of this game. And then just I sort of my game against Necrons, I went first, pre-game moved my bikes to position to threaten him, and then he pre-game moved backwards, and I moved backwards again because I was like, oh, he just has to come out because he's going to have to score Asian machineries and code of combat, and I'm going to score Nachmund. It seems easier. which was bizarre. It was a really, really weird way to approach the game into Necros. Like, I don't actually have to kill them. I did anyway, because the list is also cracked and amazing at shooting. The list is super, super weird. It is not like anything I've ever played before, which definitely came with some difficulties in shooting it. The damage output is super, super weirdly consistent, but also inconsistent at the same time, where you will roll a lot of dice at people, and you will generally get about the same amount of damage every time. The problem is that amount of damage is very, very variable on a unit-to-unit basis in terms of like 3-up saves, 2-up saves, being very swingy for it, outside of specifically the seismic cannons, which are very low number of shots, so they are 1 point of that. So it's a lot of, over the course of all of your units, you'll get very consistent damage output, but where you can deliver that isn't always consistent. So like across the 3 units of bikes, the 2 units of neophytes, you will do probably the same amount of damage to almost every army every turn. The problem will be is if you needed all that, you damage to be on unit A, and only 4 units could get to unit A, and it was units 5 and 6 that high rolled, and units 1 to 2 low rolled. Like that is very interesting to manage, especially with as much mobility as you have, because it means that your units can be everywhere, which means you have to consider them being everywhere, which means that they will end up being everywhere, which means your response time is really limited once you're on the board. It's a super interesting list. I would definitely recommend giving it a try if you're wanting to play GSC. It is not for the faint of heart. You have to play so aggressively that it's confusing sometimes. You're like dropping in neophytes like 3 inches away, like lined between your opponent's melee units. Like, I sure hope I kill these. Yeah, not for the faint of heart. I can't say I recommend it.
The second question about how you would make CSM shooting other than Blastmasters and the Disco Lord Baleflamer not garbage is, I think, partially, sometimes you just have to recognize that armies have strengths and weaknesses, and you can't always try to take a square peg and ram it into a circle hole. You can't.
You can't make you could make the statement like, how do you make Tau shooting, or how do you make Tau melee other than Honor Your Gauntlet and the Thermonuclear Projector not garbage? It's not what they're about.
No. And so sometimes it's better to just play the army to the strengths that are easiest to drive out of it. Like, you could bring some havocs with las cannons and you take advantage of the stratagem. But I think otherwise, for the most part, you benefit from playing to your army's easiest to access strengths instead of trying to force it to play in a way that it's perhaps not built to play.
Yeah, exactly. Don't try and force it. Understand the armies have strengths and weaknesses, and that they will wane with the time. Unfortunately, having melee as your only damage output is a little bit weaker than having shooting as your only damage output, just because of the way that the phase works, with all melee stuff being essentially predetermined at the start of the phase in terms of what you can target, whereas shooting has like new targets open up and shooting as you go, whereas that doesn't happen in melee, which just creates a different dynamic to it. And obviously melee having like fail rates, like having to be in charge range and make charges and all this stuff. But then you get a lot more mobility from charges, so there's advantages and disadvantages to both. You're just gonna have to live with it, unfortunately. You can lean into Forge World if they ever fix Let the Galaxy Burn to work with like Volkite Contemptors and Decimators. I don't think they're terrible options. You can definitely use them. Emperor's Children have good shooting. You can play Blastmasters. You said it right there. How do you make CSM shooting other than Blastmasters and the Disco Lord Baleflamer not garbage? You don't. You use the tools you have.
You can bring in some Agents of the Empyrean stuff, and you can ally in like some War Dogs.
You can run War Dogs. War Dogs Executioners are not a bad unit. They're definitely interesting. You now have Soul Grinders and Zenith Flamers as an option as well. I realize they're not case based shooting, but they're tools that you have access to. A Fate Schemer, a squad of Blue Horrors, and 2 squads of 5 Flamers, or like a 5. I think you go like a 5 and a 4 fits in a patrol. You can slot that in for 2 CP into any army and get a decent amount of shooting, a little bit of psychic support. I don't think that's a terrible decision either.
But what are Space Marine strengths? So this is going to depend on the army that you're trying to play. So Sanguinary Guard and Blood Angels are a strength of a subfaction of Marines.
The Volkite Contemptor.
Or that. Sanguinary Guard are a strength of the faction.
Has anyone done this bad takes on Votann? I don't know, but I wouldn't trust an American to know what a bad take was anyway, so... Sorry, Nan.
We're full circle, right back to giving shit to America on the other end of it.
I mean, I don't have to give them shit. They just are shit.
Oh, that's rude. Brutal.
It's like, come on, man. Like, you don't...
No, tell me all the strengths.
We did.
Sorry, I don't want to talk about the worst faction in the game. Sorry, Marine players. Not just from a
Salamanders are
stats
cool.
perspective. I honestly wouldn't be sad if 90% of the Space Marine stuff got yeeted into the sun, other than Blood Angels, because I like Blood Angels.
No, man, I want to put White Scars again. Like I miss my +1
I would be
damage.
okay with White Scars. 2 sub-factions can stay, the rest are gone.
All right, we are going to end it a little bit early this week. I think we are peered out on questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. In response to Alex, we will play the outro riff for the full 10 seconds before we end the stream. If we come back for a brief second at the end of it, it's because we've not quite timed the button yet. Hopefully we will see you all next week for episode 10, which is a big number. That's a round number, which means it's important. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you didn't catch the spiel in the middle, I'll do the Cliff Notes versions of it again. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been episode 9. I've been Innes, and I've been joined by Nathan. We thank and love and respect all of you guys for being here. If you could drop us a like or a comment on YouTube, or if you have the means and you are willing to check us out on patreon.com/statcheck or youtube.com/c/statcheck or our website at stat-check.com. We would really appreciate that, everybody. Thank you very much. And the balance data slate will not fix Space Marines. It just won't. It will somehow increase government's points. I don't know why, but it will.
Bye-bye.